Chapter 577. When the arrows flew towards them, Li Honyuan brought Jingwan to one side. The rest of them, including Granny Gong, instantly tore off their outerwear. They spun in the air, shook their bodies, and caught most of the arrows. As for the rest, they cleverly dodged them. In addition, the speed at which the soldiers released their arrows was different, so there were not many arrows in the first round. However, the arrows that dodged the arrows continued flying towards their companions on the opposite side. They were not far away from the surrounding soldiers. The soldiers probably did not expect such an outcome. Some of them could not react in time. The situation became chaotic in an instant. Naturally, their bows and arrows were useless. By the time they fought back with their weapons, several lives had already been taken, and their counterattack wasn't that satisfactory. In fact, as Li Honyuan expected, there was basically no conflict with Zhonghua. The garrison here looked neat, but it was just for show. When faced with a real life and death situation, not to mention an effective attack, there weren't many who had the courage to take the initiative to attack these ferocious shadow guards. Jingwan was not afraid of any poison. Moreover, Li Honyuan was always with her. Gong Jiu did not have so many scruples. He used the poison in his body as if it was free. Of course, because the holy item of the barbarians had a range of 10 feet, in order to ensure the effect, he stayed 10 feet away from Jingwan and the others. The others tried their best to stay within 10 feet of Jingwan. However, to avoid accidentally hurting their own people, the soldiers within 10 feet of Jingwan were also protected. They could only rely on their own secret guards to deal with them. At the same time, Li Honyuan, who had not done much before, also started a massacre at this moment. However, because he had to protect Jingwan at all times, his movements were greatly hindered, and his lethality was reduced. If Jingwan was not pregnant, he could still tie Jingwan on his back. Now he could not. However, for Li Honyuan, it was not a big problem. He just did not need to make big movements. His movements were small. He held the knife in his hand and slashed it down, causing blood to splatter everywhere. Jingwan saw this. Her heart was beating very fast, but she did not panic. She originally thought that she would definitely die, but the situation was reversed once again. If she could survive, it would be the best thing. She stayed close to Li Honyuan and coordinated with his movements from time to time. She also held the dagger tightly in her hand. When needed, she was ready to attack at any time. Although the enemy outnumbered them and they did not have much chance of winning, no one would give up and no one thought too much. As the blood on her body increased, the color of her dress changed. There was also a lot of blood on her face and hands. The smell of blood was unusually clear. Jingwan became calmer and calmer. During this period, she attacked Li Honyuan twice from behind and retreated after one attack. It was enough to let the enemy see blood, because Gong Jiu had applied poison on the dagger 2 days ago. It caused a wound directly, which was more effective than Gong Jiu scattering it. The second and third lives disappeared from Jingwan's hands, but it did not make her heart waver again. Li Honyuan saw this. After he found that Jingwan was very cautious and did not act rashly, he let her do what she wanted. In his eyes, Jingwan was also changing rapidly. She was more and more like the person in his previous life. Sure enough, even if the external environment was different, she was still the same in her bones. It was a chaotic battle. However, even if the enemy outnumbered them, there was a disadvantage because these people could not all swarm up. Unknowingly, Sun Yilin had already retreated outside. In fact, this situation was also out of his expectations. After all, there were some things that he had never seen before. He did not know that these soldiers were so useless. There were more than 300 of them, but they were still defeated by a dozen people. If all the soldiers in Qi Yuan's army were like this, then they did not need to do anything. They could just open the door and let the enemy in. It was clearly a sure-win situation, but he didn't feel anything in his heart. Perhaps it was because he understood Li Honyuan better. In his opinion, it wasn't strange for Li Honyuan to be able to turn any dangerous situation around. However, he was still not too worried. With 30 times the number advantage, they would be able to bury the other side alive. Although they looked fierce, they were already beginning to get injured. People, when faced with death, would also erupt with endless potential. Go, all of you go. They only have so few people. Kill them, and everyone will be rewarded. If they don't die, you will be the ones to die. Guard Sun's encouragement obviously had a great effect. Sun Yilan's gaze was always on Jingwan. He had never seen her like this before. Even if she was injured, she was still brave, determined, and agile. She cooperated well with Li Hongyuan. As a result, Li Hongyuan's movements became smoother and smoother. There was really no room for others to interfere. Sun Yilan seemed to be entranced. He suddenly looked away and lowered his head. His body was trembling. However, no one could see the expression on his face. Sun Yilan did not know why. Suddenly, he raised his head again. His body stopped trembling. He turned his head and looked in the direction where they came from. There seemed to be some movement. Sun Yilan looked at the chaotic scene and prepared to go through the forest to see the situation. Now was not the time for accidents. However, Sun Yilan stopped halfway. There was no need to look. With such obvious sounds of horse hooves, there was definitely a large number of them. Moreover, to be able to ride horses in such a place, their speed was not slow. It would be strange if there were only one or two people, but with so many people, it would be strange if they were ordinary people. The safest way was to leave immediately. No matter who came, it had nothing to do with him. However, Sun Yilan did not think so. If he had to hide his head and show his tail for the rest of his life, it was definitely not a life he wanted. In fact, he had never thought about what the future would be like. A person like him probably did not have a so-called future. He used the puppet Gu to control Guard Sun and made him cooperate with him. Sometimes he had to take risks. Sun Yilan picked up a bough from the ground and pulled out an arrow from a person nearby. He was a young master of an aristocratic family. A gentleman's 6 arts were indispensable. In fact, Sun Yilan's archery had always been good. However, he did not need this to add flowers to his brocade. Thus, he only practiced in private. Not many people knew about it. He aimed. His target was Jingwan and Li Hongyuan. There was no specific target. Anyway, it was their position. It did not matter whether he shot or not. Anyway, his goal was not to hurt them. With a swoosh, Li Hongyuan and Jingwan discovered it almost at the same time. Jingwan saw it, while Li Hongyuan relied on his hearing. Without thinking, Jingwan blocked in front of Li Hongyuan. However, Jingwan did something wrong this time. Because this arrow was not a threat to Li Hongyuan at all, it was not difficult to block it. Jingwan's block hindered him from taking action. It was already too late to do anything. Li Hongyuan pushed away after speaking and then turned sideways, perfectly avoiding the arrow. However, things were not over yet. Jingwan was also caught off guard when she was pushed away. She rushed forward 2 steps and was concerned about Li Hongyuan's situation. She hurriedly turned around and did not pay attention to the situation in front of her. At this moment, a hand clasped her neck and a short blade was placed on her neck at the same time. Jingwan steadied herself by leaning against the person holding her hostage. She pursed her lips and looked at Li Hongyuan, who had completely stopped. She did not say anything. Stop! Li Hongyuan did not step forward. He ordered coldly. His men also obeyed his orders. In fact, because they were relatively close to each other, even if they didn't notice what happened at first, they could still see it clearly now. One of them was even just a little more than a centimeter away from Jingwan. However, when Guard Sun snuck in, he had already seen it clearly and quickly retreated with Jingwan. The drop of blood on Jingwan's neck was enough to prove that if anything went wrong, he would definitely kill her immediately. Jingwan kept looking at Li Hongyuan. She would not say things like, "Don't worry about me," because even if she did, he would not listen. Suddenly, she turned to look at Sun Yilan. Her eyes were filled with bone-deep hatred. Really, she had never hated a person so much, even when Ruan Fengfei schemed against her Luo family. Sun Yilan's heart was ruthlessly stabbed. Compared to being completely indifferent to him, perhaps it was worth being happy about. However, a deep hatred would still make one's heart ache. Because of the chaos, because Li Hongyuan's people had already killed until their eyes were red, they would only ruthlessly kill the enemies near them. Their attention towards the outside would naturally weaken. The only one who could still divert 1 or 2 points of attention was probably Li Hongyuan, because he had someone to protect him, and also because he had to protect Jingwan. The former created a distraction for him, while the latter forced him to divert his attention. Whether or not it would succeed, it was really hard to say. However, it still succeeded. What are you doing in a daze, still not killing them? Guardson's assassin was very excited, very excited. As long as Jin Xinhuan died, as long as he died. However, before they could move, screams sounded from the outside. The clattering of horse hooves, the sound of arrows piercing through the air, and accompanied by a shout of kill, without mercy. More and more soldiers fell to the ground. And just at this time, Li Hongyuan's shadow guards once again made their move. This time, there was a purpose. They brought Li Hongyuan out and tore open a hole on the outside. The two sides converged, and Li Hongyuan was completely safe. And those garrison troops were still being ruthlessly strangled, without any power to resist. The scene was quickly cleared. However, the people who came to rescue did not dare to make a sound. Just now, there was still a chaotic battle, but now there was a deathly silence. During this time, Jingwan had already been brought a considerable distance away. Guardson's back was against a tree, and Jingwan was in front of him, vigilantly looking left and right. Whenever someone took a step forward, the dagger pressed against Jingwan's neck would sink deeper. And Sun Yilin had also leaned over at the very beginning. So now, it was 3 people on the opposite side facing 300 people on this side. This situation was somewhat similar to the initial confrontation. However, there was obviously a huge difference. Previously, even if Li Hongyuan and the others were in a weaker position, they were still calm. Now, all right, among the 3 people, only Guardson could not stop trembling. Only his trembling hands caused the dagger to continue to sink deeper into Jingwan's flesh bit by bit. Li Hongyuan saw this and felt pain in his heart. However, he did not let it out easily. But the anger in his heart was terrifying. He Zhihai, who came to rescue, could not help but swallow his saliva. It should be known that he was one of the people who was least afraid of Li Hongyuan. Now, even he could not help but want to keep a distance. However, things were getting troublesome. He Zhihai scratched his head and cursed in his heart. Who the hell were these people? They actually dared to pull a tooth from the tiger's mouth. They were simply too old and tired of living. Sun Yilin suddenly reached out and grabbed Guardson's hand, making him move his hand away. Jingwan did not take the stabbing pain to heart. Like Li Hongyuan most of the time, it was as if she did not feel pain at all. She only had Li Hongyuan in her eyes. He was the only person she cared about at the moment. Li Hongyuan knew what Sun Yilin wanted, but he did not seem to be very sure. For a moment, he did not speak. Meanwhile, Sun Yilin's heart was as calm as still water, and he had no intention of speaking. It was both difficult and easy to deal with Li Hongyuan, because he was hard to chew on, and once his weakness was grasped, it would be easy to deal with him. After this battle, it would probably become the consensus of the world. In the end, it was Li Hongyuan who lost his cool first. This was also inevitable. What do you want? What do I want? To be honest, Sun Yilin wasn't very sure. Even if he had taken a risk to capture Jingwan, he wasn't sure what his initial motive was. He did not want to hurt Jingwan, and he did not want to capture Jingwan to completely escape. After all, if he left just now, the arrest warrant would not take long to follow him like a shadow. But obviously not. Was it to see Li Hongyuan being controlled by him and being submissive? In fact, it was not. In Sun Yilin's heart, excluding Jingwan, he actually admired Li Hongyuan. Lu Qingdi had so many sons, but he did not like any of them. His cousin Prince Kong was quite unbearable. When Li Hongyuan first showed signs in front of him, he felt the power of an emperor from him. At that time, he actually had a choice in his heart. So, what did one do now? Well, he really did not know. Sun Yilin was very clear-headed, but his mind seemed to be very muddled. He felt like he did not know what was going on. There was the sound of horse hooves again, but this time, it was very clear. There was only one horse. Looking back, he did not need to see very clearly to know that it was Jingwan's maid, Little Black. Little Black was indeed unique compared to other people. However, Little Black did not come alone. In front of her, there was a person lying horizontally. As they approached, Black Sister turned over and pulled down the person on the horse's back. Compared to Little Black, the person was just a weak woman. Being caught by Little Black, she was very embarrassed. She staggered and struggled to stand firm. Sun Yilin, if you dare to hurt the princess, I'll skin her alive. Little Black's eyes were fierce. At the same time, the woman in her hand was strangled by Little Black. Her face was pale and even a little green. It was enough to prove that Little Black was absolutely not joking. And this person, Jingwan naturally recognized Min Xiaoyuan. Li Honyuan naturally knew Min Xiaoyuan very well. At this time, a deep thought flashed in his eyes. He thought about some things carefully and came to a conclusion. Min Xiaoyuan was not so unimportant to Sun Yilin. On the contrary, she might be very important. From Sun Yilin's attitude towards her, she had a place in his heart. On a deeper level of analysis, this place was very, very important. Because to a certain extent, Min Xiaoyuan was actually Sun Yilin's only one. Now, there are still people who still care about Sun Yilin, such as Sun Yijia and old Madame Sunday. However, these two people had more important things. Their thoughts on him would become weaker as time passed. He used to have a servant who never left him. However, that servant had already fallen into the hands of Li Hongyuan's subordinates. He had been tortured, and now it was unknown whether he was alive or dead. Min Xiaoyuan was not only the only person who stayed by his side, but she had also given him her absolute sincerity and passionate feelings. Sun Yilin had never met anyone else who had given everything to him, and he probably would not meet anyone else in the future. Could he really be indifferent when she was in danger? Li Hongyuan's eyesight was very good. Although Sun Yilin was covered tightly and his hands were behind his back, he still faintly noticed that something was wrong with him. Little Blackie, let her go first. Little Blackie naturally would not disobey his words. Min Xiaoyuan had gradually lost consciousness. When she was suddenly released, a mouthful of air was suddenly injected into her lungs. She coughed fiercely. Her throat was burning with pain, and she gradually woke up. Perhaps because of the coughing, her physiological tears could not stop falling. She looked very pitiful. After recovering, her eyes stared at Sun Yilin without blinking. As she looked, her tears fell even more fiercely. This was obviously not caused by physiological reasons. There are some things that you should have said earlier. Why didn't you say earlier? Min Xiaoyuan seemed to be blaming him, but she was more sad. She was extremely sad. Still, no one spoke. It's not that I can't get married. Why do I have to follow you shamelessly? Min Xiaoyuan's voice lowered. However, I am not reconciled to come to this point today. Why can you be so cruel and so heartless? The person you have in your heart is a married woman. It's fine if you can't forget her, but you still do crazy things because of your own selfishness. Are you still a human? The saddest thing is that even if you're not a human, I still like you. It's me who is cheap. However, Sun Yilin, if I die, will you open your eyes and look at me? Min Xiaoyuan looked at him like that, but in her eyes, Sun Yilin was always indifferent. The last brilliance in Min Xiaoyuan's eyes disappeared. As the saying goes, there is no greater sorrow than the death of the heart. If you want to use me to threaten Sun Yilin, now you have the wrong idea. He is not a human for a long time. However, you can kill me. I can't live anymore. Min Xiaoyuan's voice was low. What she said were her last words. However, just as Min Xiaoyuan closed her eyes, Sun Yilin moved. He lifted his leg and walked over step by step. He had only taken 3 steps when with a shio sound, an arrow flew out and pierced through his thigh above his knee. However, he didn't seem to feel it and continued to limp forward. With another shio sound, another arrow was shot in the same place on his other leg. His speed slowed down, but he didn't stop. When the 3rd arrow was shot, the target was Sun Yilin's arm. Min Xiaoyuan heard the movement and opened her eyes. She was shocked beyond words. When she saw the 4th arrow piercing his other arm, she suddenly struggled frantically and almost broke free from Hei Mei's shackles. Stop shooting, please stop shooting. Min Xiaoyuan broke down. However, Min Xiaoyuan's words were obviously useless. However, enough. Jingwan's 2 words made the people who were still aiming put down their hands. The reason why Jingwan spoke up was not because she felt sympathy for Sun Yilin, but because of Min Xiaoyuan and her feelings for her. At the same time, Jingwan felt that the shackles on her back were almost gone. She quickly dodged. The people who were aiming at Guard Sun with their crossbows fired together. In the blink of an eye, Guard Sun became a hedgehog and couldn't be more dead. Li Hanyuan rushed to Jingwan's side almost immediately. When he saw the small bloody hole on Jingwan's neck and shoulder, his face was terrifyingly gloomy. Gong Jiu also rushed over. Fortunately, there was still some distance between the blood vessels. With some medicine, a scab would quickly form. Chapter 578. Looking at the struggling Min Xiaoyuan and Sun Yilin who never stopped moving forward, Jingwan had an indescribable feeling in her heart. Looking at the situation, it was impossible that Sun Yilin did not have Min Xiaoyuan in his heart. However, as for how deep his love was, Jingwan felt that it was not possible. Sun Yilin was not the kind of person who was easily moved and would not change his mind until death. As for him, choosing Min Xiaoyuan and letting her go, there should be many factors involved. Sun Yilin himself might not be clear about the specific reasons. Jingwan waved her hand and asked Blackie to let go of Min Xiaoyuan. When Min Xiaoyuan was free, she immediately staggered to Sun Yilin and caught his tottering body. Yilin, how are you, ah? How are you? Talk to me, Yilin. A pitiful person must have something hateful. Sometimes it also made sense. Min Xiaoyuan did not belong to the former, but Sun Yilin belonged to the latter. Min Xiaoyuan knelt on the ground, and Sun Yilin also knelt on the ground. His body leaned forward on her shoulder. The mask on his face had fallen off at some point, but the hood was still on. In his current position, she could only see his mouth and chin at most. However, Jingwan found that the visible scar had disappeared a lot. Jingwan's heart skipped a beat. She lowered her head and touched the prayer beads in her hand. It seemed that the beads in her hand had affected the goo in his body when he was too close to her. Because it was not direct contact, it could not be removed directly. However, it was obviously affected by it. She did not know if Sun Yilin's current state was due to his nature or the influence of the goo worm. However, no matter what the reason was, Jingwan wanted him to get rid of the goo worm so that he would not be affected by external factors. That was her true intention. She wanted to see if Sun Yilin would say anything about what he had done. To put it bluntly, she wanted to see if he was still a human being. She would decide whether he would be given a death sentence or a delayed death sentence. In any case, he would definitely not be acquitted. Min Xiaoyuan hugged Sun Yilin and cried bitterly. She was so careful that she was afraid that touching the arrow would worsen his pain. She was really helpless and helpless. I'm sorry, Xiaoyuan. I'm sorry. Sun Yilin repeated these 3 words over and over again, his voice getting lower and lower. At some point, he dropped his hand and completely lost consciousness. Yilin. No matter how Min Xiaoyuan shouted, he didn't respond. If she didn't feel his breath, she would have thought that Min Xiaoyuan couldn't support him and didn't dare to move him. She could only look at Jingwan. Princess consort. It couldn't be more obvious, but she couldn't say the rest of the words. What right did a murderer have to beg the hostage to save his life? It was already very merciful that she didn't immediately send him to hell. Yuan, I'm tired. Let's find a place to rest. As for Sun Yilin, he should atone for his sins before he dies. At this moment, he was indeed physically and mentally exhausted. Who was the one who said that we should have killed him earlier? Li Hanyuan did not hold back and went straight to Jingwan's heart. Have you forgotten the pain after the scar has healed? What about asking him to atone for his sins? That was just an excuse. The sins that he had committed could not be forgiven no matter how many lifetimes he lived. It's not because of him. Moreover, it's different from before. Can there really be another storm? If he can continue to make trouble now, it can only mean that your husband is really incompetent. Let's go. Li Hanyuan directly picked up Jingwan. Anyway, he was used to it. A few hundred more people wouldn't change anything. He Jihai obediently offered his horse. Anyway, he didn't dare to touch the living king of Hell's Head. The reckless little tyrant also knew how to flatter people. Of course, in this world, only Li Hanyuan could awaken this skill. Facing other people, it was embarrassing. He definitely belonged to the kind of people who had the most nerves. Of course, the awakening of this skill had nothing to do with Li Hongyuan's identity. It was purely a fan of his idol. Li Hongyuan's deterrence to the horse was still the same. However, as he Jihai's warhorse, with such a special master, it was quite sensible and didn't dare to act rashly. With Jingwan on the horse, Li Hongyuan held her in his arms. With a gentle shake of the reins, the horse trotted. The others also got on their horses. Naturally, there were more than 10 horses that needed to be shared. They surrounded the periphery and suppressed their speed to keep pace with Li Hongyuan. Min Xiaoyuan and Sun Yilan were last, so they were a little unlucky. Although Gong Jiu was last, he simply and violently pulled out the arrow from Sun Yilan's body. As for the process, Sun Yilan woke up from the pain and fainted again. Min Xiaoyuan was in tears, but didn't dare to say anything. Gong Jiu pretended not to see it. He simply treated to stop the bleeding and then threw Sun Yilan on the horse. Then he clapped his hands and got on the horse and left. Min Xiaoyuan got on the horse with trembling hands. Although she had learned how to ride a horse, her level was very limited. It was fine to ride on flat and spacious places, but it was very difficult in such a place. However, she had no choice. If she didn't take him away, he could only stay here. Then, there was only a dead end waiting for him. She couldn't do it. Although there might not be a good ending if she took him back reluctantly, she also didn't dare to take him away. She didn't know where to go. Not being able to take good care of him was one thing, but if she ran away, it would obviously implicate her family. She had already let them down. If she implicated them, then it would really be difficult to absolve herself from the blame. Min Xiaoyuan gritted her teeth and carefully drove the horse forward. She used all her strength to barely keep up with the team in front of her. If Li Hongyuan sped up a little, she would be left far behind. She concentrated all her energy and didn't have time to think about nonsense. However, along the way, her tears basically didn't disappear. The temporary place to stay was naturally in the town where the garrison was located. They booked the best restaurant. With hundreds of people like them, even if they didn't wear military uniforms, it could be seen that they were absolutely not simple. They didn't need to do anything, and the guests in the restaurant disappeared at the fastest speed. The shopkeeper and the rest of the people in the restaurant were trembling with fear, shaking their legs, and putting on a low posture. In the lobby, Li Hongyuan found a place to sit down with Jingwan and let her drink water first. For the rest of the things, Mama Gong put on the style of a steward and methodically made arrangements. From the food and accommodation of Li Hongyuan and Jingwan to the arrangement of the guards, the rest of the people naturally all went to the garrison camp temporarily. Then, they had to prepare the carriage back to the capital, the things that would be used on the road, and so on. These things could be done by the shopkeeper of the restaurant. Prince Jean was the most generous in terms of money. Mama Gong had a lot of banknotes with her. After throwing a few banknotes over, even if the shopkeeper was afraid in his heart, he still smiled and repeatedly promised that things would be done properly. In this place, there wouldn't be anything good. However, even if they only stayed for one night, some things must be brand new. In order to let Jingwan rest as soon as possible, these things must be properly prepared in the first place. Therefore, many people were busy going in and out. The kitchen first prepared some food. Jingwan had the sacred object of the barbarians in her hand, so she could eat without worry. When the food was finished, the room was ready. The husband and wife took a good bath, loosened their muscles, and changed into clean and soft clothes. Jingwan finally felt relaxed. At the same time, tiredness also came up. In the eyes of Li Hongyuan, the most important person in the world, naturally, he accompanied Jingwan to rest. Therefore, He Jihai, who was waiting outside for Li Hongyuan, could only stare helplessly at this moment. Then, he went out with a big heart. As for how to clean up the hundreds of garrison soldiers who died before, that guard's son intended to kill the prince of the imperial court. Even if he died, it couldn't be left unsettled. How to deal with it, and so on, he didn't care. Although, in fact, his position was the highest among all of them, so he should be the one to deal with it. However, when the problem was placed in front of him, he had a naive face and expressed that he didn't understand at all. There was no choice but to let Guard Qian take on the heavy responsibility. Although he was only the leader of the guards, it was the prince's residence. His master was the victim. When he found the other generals in the garrison, he didn't dare to put on airs. He carefully flattered him and tried his best to explain himself. He swore that it had nothing to do with him. However, for people who came from Li Hongyuan's side, it was hard to say other things, but one thing was for sure, and that was to do things by the book. Therefore, no matter who it was, he didn't need to explain. He would investigate to the end and hand the result to his master. As for how to deal with it, it was entirely up to his master. Whether it was to do things by the book or privately, it was all up to him. His subordinates only needed to execute. By the time Jingwan had rested enough, another day had passed. He called Yi Zhihai over and first asked about the situation in the capital and how he came to the border. It turned out that Li Hongyuan left the capital to look for medicine for Jingwan. Then, he found out that Jingwan went missing. Lu Qingdi became anxious and sent people to search all over the country. However, he didn't know the reason, so he couldn't make a big fuss. The people he sent were the blackguards and some of the elite forces. The person in charge of the blackguards was Li Suyan. This was needless to say. The person in charge of the others was Fu Yunting. According to Lu Qingdi's intention, they were all his trusted officials with outstanding abilities. Only when the heavy responsibility of finding his beloved son was given to them could he be at ease. Perhaps this was the reason why he gave it to Li Suyan. However, Fu Yunting was definitely not the reason. At this time, the emperor didn't forget to find an opportunity to get rid of Fu Yunting. He really has good intentions. When he was in the northwest, he used you, his most favored son. This time, he continued to use you to make trouble. Yuan, you're actually a shield he set up. If anything happens to you, it's because he cares about you the most. Therefore, no matter how angry he is, no matter how unwise his decision is, it's understandable. And you're the real root of the disaster. Jingwan said lightly with endless sarcasm. Who knows? Who cares what he thinks? Anyway, he wouldn't be able to sit in that position for more than a few days. Li Hongyuan's expression was indifferent. He didn't take Lu Qingdi seriously at all. Yi Zhihai expressed that he didn't know how to beat around the bush and continued to report. After Li Hongyuan left White Dragon Temple, during the period before he met Ruan Fangfei, he still kept in touch with his subordinates. Although he wasn't clear about some things, he still gave Luo Peishan and others some information to stabilize the situation in the capital. After there was no news of Li Hongyuan, although they were a little worried, they didn't panic. Several big shots took the risk and secretly gathered together. With the limited information they had and the wisdom of several people, they roughly determined the possible direction Li Hongyuan might be. After the people looking for Li Hongyuan left the capital, Li Suyin and Fu Yunting were on the surface. Yi Zhihai led more than 1,000 of the most elite people and was the main force looking for Li Hongyuan. They only had a rough direction and naturally had to disperse. Later, they found some marks left by the secret guards along the way. From the false things, they found the correct information and finally found Li Hongyuan at the last moment. Hearing that Li Hongyuan actually had a backup plan, Jingwan had a feeling that this was indeed the case. This was normal, and encountering the final killing trap was probably really an accident. However, it was that accident that almost capsized the boat in the gutter and really fell into it. Therefore, even if they were trapped in the valley, they weren't nervous at all. Even if they didn't succeed in breaking out, they would be fine in the end. This was probably the reason why they didn't let some of the secret guards break out with all their strength in the beginning. After all, the more they forced, the greater the reaction of the people of Zhang, and it would be more troublesome. Your Highness, out of 10 pieces of information from your subordinates, at most 2 are correct. Say if we didn't find it, then wouldn't. At this point, Yi Zhihai obediently shut his mouth. Li Hongyuan glanced at him lightly. If you got it wrong, you probably wouldn't have lived to this day. You're all so stupid. Yi Zhihai choked. However, the little tyrant expressed his generosity and didn't bicker with his idol. Your Highness, you're wrong to say that. If it's really that simple, then wouldn't others be able to easily find the right direction? You have to know that there are more than one group of people secretly looking for you. But only they found the right direction. It could be seen that it was still very difficult. He was also very smart. He Zhihai was a little complacent. Jingwan had also heard a little about what the He Zhihai of Li Hongyuan's previous life was like. Was this really that taciturn and frightening god of death? When they first met, they thought he was the little tyrant. In the end, he was actually a fool. It made people want to cover their faces and not dare to look directly at him. Don't be silly. If it wasn't for someone who knew about those signals, it would be strange if you could find the right direction. Sure enough, if there wasn't a major turning point in life, the devil would also be naive. Jingwan looked at her husband's face. She really wanted to tell He Zhihai to quickly change the expression on his face. Otherwise, if someone regretted saving your family and created a future general that he wasn't satisfied with, he might cause another family change and change back to the original god of death. Jingwan didn't say anything in the end. She silently picked up the cup and drank water. In her heart, she lit a candle for He Zhihai. Although he wouldn't really cause a family change, it was certain that he would be fiercely taught a lesson. Now, he was far from being qualified to be the commander of the army. As for the specific situation in the capital, He Zhihai wasn't particularly clear. After all, he didn't look like someone who was good at using his brain. He only needed to unswervingly and obediently carry out the task. However, it was obvious that the situation wouldn't be peaceful. At least from what Furong said, Sir Su, who held the title of Minister of Rights, was actually someone from the former Wei, and the person he wanted to help was Prince Rue. Imperial concubine, Su had saved the emperor, and the poison used in the assassination was unique to the former Wei. This made people suspect that it was a good show orchestrated by Sir Su. After all, only when Li Hongming ascended to the throne could he obtain the greatest benefits. In addition, he was Furong's master. The poison that Furong put on Jingwan came from him. Thus, the person cooperating with Southern Qi was clearly him. Thus, he understood a lot more about Li Hongyuan. He already had his suspicions and knew that Li Hongyuan was dangerous. How could he let Li Hongyuan live? According to common sense, he would certainly confirm the implementation of the plan on Southern Qi's side. However, since Prince Rue was also among the people looking for Li Hongyuan, it was clear that Sir Su and Southern Qi's cooperation wasn't very close. Both sides had reservations. Sir Su didn't know about Li Hongyuan's situation or even his whereabouts. Without Li Hongyuan, the biggest threat, taking the opportunity to do something wasn't like Sir Su's style. Based on the above situation, it could be seen that the drama unfolding in the capital must be very exciting. Lu Qingdi's heart must have been devastated. After He Zhihai left, only Li Hongyuan and Jingwan were left in the room. Yuan, how do you think things will develop next? Who will make the first move? Jingwan tilted her head and asked. Li Hongming was once demoted to a commoner. From the beginning to the end, those who supported him were probably only 30 to 40% of the original number, or even less. During this time, Li Hongyi's power grew rapidly. The former increasingly felt that the latter was a threat, and the latter would not allow the former to continue to grow. The former is likely to stake everything on one throw, while the latter believes that he is the strongest and probably won't allow the person on the throne to continue to sit on it. Furthermore, both of their mothers are dragging their broken bodies, and no one knows when they will die. They were originally full of ambition. If they can't sit on the position of Empress Dowager, they will probably die with everlasting regret. Therefore, Prince Kong and Prince Rue may make the first move. In any case, he is not destined to die of old age. Before he dies, he will issue an edict to pass down the throne. In my previous life, they acted together. In this life, I should also fulfill their wishes. I can even do it a little earlier. His birthday is over, and the first day of the first lunar month is a good day. The court officials and their wives will all enter the palace. Isn't this a good opportunity to catch them all in one fell swoop? Isn't this a little too rushed? Forcing the emperor to abdicate was not a trivial matter. Wang, for some things, the longer you drag it out, the more detailed the plan is. If you drag it out, there's a chance that something will go wrong. Moreover, if you can't settle something properly, you might lose other important things. In my previous life, I was also biding my time, hoping to be more confident, but what I waited for was yours. After I brought you back to the capital, I directly massacred the palace. At that time, I didn't have the right time, place, or people. Li Hanyuan lowered his eyes and said softly, "Ah Yuan, I'm here." Jingwan held his hand. Li Hanyuan looked back at her. "I know, and I will always be here. Come in. Prince, Princess. What are your orders, Prince?" Blackie came in and asked respectfully, "Bring Fu Rong here." Blackie obviously hesitated for a moment. "Yes." Then she retreated. "Fu Rong's injury is a little serious. Isn't it inappropriate at this time?" Jingwan said, "This is the right situation. A servant who protects the master can naturally gain the master's trust and get some important information. The other party will also believe that Fu Rong is not exposed." Jingwan understood what he meant. This was the most appropriate situation. Besides, Fu Rong was seriously injured in order to cover her. There were some things that didn't need to be covered up. Let Gong Jio give her more good medicine. I don't expect your heart to be hard in this life, Li Hanyuan said. Jingwan rolled her eyes at him. How could the situation be the same? Before Fu Rong came, Min Xiaoyuan came first. Min Xiaoyuan kowtowed outside, begging Jingwan to be merciful. After a long time, Sun Yilin was about to die. Jingwan glanced at Li Hanyuan and didn't say anything. She guessed that Gong Jio didn't have the order and didn't treat Sun Yilin at all. He was injured before, and then he was hit by a few arrows. Although Jingwan didn't know the specific injury, it seemed that the position of the arrows at that time was probably the position of the bones. It was a miracle that Sun Yilin could last until now. Princess Consort, I beg you to save him. Xiao Yuan is willing to be a slave or a slave to repay you, Princess Consort. Li Hanyuan sneered. Seeing Sun Yilin holding you hostage, but knowing that you are soft-hearted and can affect my decision, she is so shameless. She is a noble girl from an aristocratic family. She will only be disliked if she serves others. If I were in her shoes, I would do the same. Love is born without knowing where it came from. That's all. Li Hanyuan was silent. Because he was also affectionate, he didn't want to refute. After a while, he said, "Because of Min Xiaoyuan, Wan doesn't want to take Sun Yilin's life?" Now, Li Hanyuan didn't treat Sun Yilin as a love rival. When faced with Sun Yilin's problems, he didn't make decisions based on his feelings like before. In Sun Yilin's current situation, even if he is saved, he will be a cripple. Is Sun Yilin's threat determined by a healthy body? As the saying goes, people's hearts are unpredictable. As long as he is alive, he can cause trouble. What if he becomes a fool? Jingwan asked softly. Li Hanyuan was stunned when he heard this. He really didn't think of this possibility. The main thing was that there was no such precedent. However, in Jingwan's previous life, madmen and fools didn't have to bear the consequences of breaking the law. Can Gongju do it? Jingwan continued to ask. For some people, it is better to die than to become a fool. Li Hanyuan was just stating a fact. So, let him decide whether he will become a fool or die. Li Hanyuan accepted Jingwan's suggestion and then asked Gong Jio to treat Sun Yilin. Chapter 579. Gong Jio received his master's order and would naturally do his best. Getting rid of the goo worm in Sun Yilin's body was also one of his tasks. In the winter, the wound did not show signs of swelling and suppuration, but there was still a high fever. If it was a doctor with mediocre medical skills, he would probably have directly asked them to prepare for the funeral. Gong Jio was different after all. In addition, he had obtained the medical books summarized by the experience of an old traveling doctor. Although he was not extraordinary, at least there were few in the world who could stand shoulder to shoulder with him. Even so, it took a lot of effort to save Sun Yilin. The final result was satisfactory. Min Xiaoyuan was at the side from the beginning to the end. She was the one who did things like fetching water and passing things. How well could a noble lady like her be expected to do these things? She was clumsy. Gong Jio did not rush her. Anyway, it would just take more time. If Min Xiaoyuan did not do these things, could he expect others to do it? Min Xiaoyuan also knew, so she could only grit her teeth and persevere. She had to do it as quickly as possible. If she was slow, it would delay Sun Yilin's condition. Therefore, When she heard Gong Jiu say saved, she heaved a sigh of relief and hurriedly thanked him. At this moment, she really did not look like a noble lady from a noble family. Could the so-called love really change a person to such an extent? Gong Jiu actually had such a small doubt in his heart. However, he would not pursue the matter because the two masters were actually typical examples. Of course, Gong Jiu did not have the intention to try. However, meeting the right person at the right time, he did not reject it. Min Xiaoyuan took care of Sun Yilin in a flurry. Fortunately, in this restaurant, she did not need to personally light the fire and cook, so they would not make things difficult for her. In reality, other things were just that there was no one to serve Sun Yilin. If she had money, she could actually hire someone outside. The problem was that she did not have money. She used to have a lot of money, but it was not with her. Ever since she separated from the person who served her, she was penniless. Sun Yilin slept for another day before waking up. At this time, his goo had been dispelled. There were only a few scars left on his face. Those were the scars left behind by the fire. In fact, they were not very obvious. Naturally, there was no frightening feeling. Sun Yilin was well aware of the changes in his body, but he didn't confirm it. Instead, he quietly looked at Min Xiaoyuan, who was lying on the edge of the bed, sleeping uneasily. His heart was very complicated. Sun Yilin believed that there was no one in the world that he felt apologetic toward, including Jingwan and his own mother. Only Min Xiaoyuan. Min Xiaoyuan jerked her head up from her sleep and met Sun Yilin's eyes. "You're awake." "That's great." His words expressed his surprise. Then, she hurriedly took the simmering medicine and carefully fed it to Sun Yilin. Sun Yilin was very cooperative. After drinking the medicine, he drank water to rinse his mouth. "I'll call Dr. Gong to take a look." Then he got up again. "Xiaoyuan, sit down." "I'm fine now. There's no need to call him. Talk to me for a while." Min Xiaoyuan had some doubts. Happy to be fine. However, Sun Yilin's gaze was firm. She could only sit down obediently. The patient was the most important. However, Sun Yilin didn't say anything. His gaze swept across Min Xiaoyuan's forehead, hands, clothes, and hair. Without asking, he knew what might have happened. Min Xiaoyuan pursed her lips. She felt uncomfortable being stared at by Sun Yilin. "Well, your face is actually—" She had nothing to say. "It's okay. It doesn't matter. Xiaoyuan, you want me to live, right?" Sun Yilin said softly. There was a bit of the gentle feeling he had in the past. Of course, even if she was very sad because of Sun Yilin, she still didn't want him to die. "You know, that's not very possible. They won't let me live." They won't. If they really wanted you to die, Wang Fei Nyang wouldn't plead with Jin Qin Wang and wouldn't let Dr. Gong come and treat you. Wang Fei Nyang is very good, really. Min Xiaoyuan looked at him. It was very sincere, but there was still unconcealable worry. She was convincing Sun Yilin, but she was also convincing herself. Fool! The reason why he was still alive was because of Jin Qin Wang Fei's infatuation. It had nothing to do with him at all. Before he shot the arrow at the two of them, perhaps there was a slight possibility. That arrow, he reckoned that Jin Qin Wang Fei couldn't wait to skin him alive. He was now very clear-headed and could see everything clearly. "Now go and ask Jin Qin Wang. Just say that I want to see him. See if he wants to see me. If he sees me, it would be rude for me to crawl in front of him like this. Could he please condescend to move, or send 2 people to carry me over?" Sun Yilin said calmly. Min Xiaoyuan put both hands on her knees and crumpled her clothes. Tears once again accumulated in her eyes, and her lips trembled. "Don't cry and don't be afraid. Don't worry, I won't die." Sun Yilin comforted her. Min Xiaoyuan wiped her eyes, got up, and went to the upper room. Would Li Hongyuan condescend to move for Sun Yilin? Obviously not. He was carried to the upper room. Of course, it wasn't as rough as expected. Min Xiaoyuan was worried and followed. However, it was obviously impossible to enter the room. She could only wait outside anxiously. His hands and feet were injured. Sun Yilin was placed on a chair. When he saw that Jingwan was also there, he wasn't the least bit surprised. Only, this time, he didn't even look at her. Jingwan and Li Hongyuan were playing chess, or it could be said that Li Hongyuan was accompanying her. Jingwan's chess skills were limited. When Li Hanyuan played with her, it was simply like playing. Jingwan wasn't that relaxed. However, she didn't rack her brains to think of every move. She played relatively casually. Toward his wife, Li Hanyuan definitely couldn't be cruel and merciless. Basically, he followed Jingwan's moves. Although he still had the upper hand, but looking at the chessboard, it was 51-49. The two of them didn't speak. Sun Yilin also maintained absolute silence. His eyes were lowered, as if he was asleep. "It looks like you're awake now." After waiting for an unknown amount of time, Li Hanyuan finally spoke with great compassion. Sun Yilin raised his head. His eyes were calm. "I've always been awake." He was conscious of everything he did and every word he said. However, now that he thought about it, it felt like he was standing from an outsider's point of view. He felt a little strange looking at everything that his other self did. However, what was done was done. There was nothing to explain. Jingwan saw him like this and narrowed her eyes slightly. Was his temperament too good? He knew that some things had already happened. He should bear the responsibility and face it calmly. Or was he really rotten to the core and couldn't change? She originally thought that after getting rid of the goo worm, he would at least repent for his actions. Did she really see the world as too beautiful? However, the temperament of the current Sun Yilin was very similar to the young Master Yilin of the past. Originally, Jingwan was a little curious about Sun Yilin's change. Now, all her curiosity was gone. The hatred in her heart faded a lot after she decided to make Sun Yilin a fool. However, Sun Yilin was a proud and arrogant person. He would probably rather die. If he chose to live a bad life than a good death, then besides doubting his previous judgment of people, he would probably feel a little happy to see the god's favored son turn into a fool. However, this possibility was not big. Otherwise, he would have escaped. Therefore, Jingwan felt that her idea and Min Xiaoyuan might be an excuse. Her starting point was not good. She had a deep malice. "What do you want from me?" Li Hanyuan was not interested in talking nonsense with him. "I hope that your highness can give me a way out and spare my life. I'll do anything." It was really unexpected for him to say such words. Li Hanyuan and Jingwan looked at each other. Even if you become a fool, there was finally a slight change in Sun Yilin's expression. It wasn't obvious, and it didn't last for long. He tilted his head and seemed to be looking outside. After a while, he said, "No problem." His voice was soft but firm. Jingwan suddenly understood. He chose to live and even become a fool. It was not for himself. It was because someone wanted him to live. Therefore, he lived, even in such a humiliating way. She did not know if it was because he had feelings for Min Xiaoyuan, or because he felt guilty for Min Xiaoyuan, or other reasons. However, no matter what decision Sun Yilin made now, he could not touch Jingwan at all. Since the matter had been settled, he was not interested in entertaining the guest. "Before I leave, I wonder if I can say a few words to your highness?" When he said this, Li Hongyuan's expression was a little bad. However, Sun Yilin was not afraid of death. He did not even blink. "What do you want to say?" Jingwan asked. He would not say anything shocking. Even if he was not afraid of death, a smart person would not seek death easily. It was two completely different concepts. Sun Yilin looked at her, but he was very honest and did not have any distracting thoughts. "I'm sorry for what happened before. There are some words that you should not take to heart. Although I was conscious at that time, I could not control myself. I heard that the witchcraft of the barbarians, no matter what kind of witchcraft it is, will show all kinds of symptoms after thousands of years, not to mention the finished witchcraft. The effect of the witchcraft of sealing emotion is ranked in the top 3 among all witchcraft. Those who cannot be controlled by it are definitely not ordinary people. Perhaps they are deeply in love. Facts have proven that regardless of whether His Highness is scheming against you or not, at least he is a good husband. Many people can't compare with him in this aspect. Even if I were him, I can't guarantee that I can do it. Even ordinary witchcraft is difficult to control. If it is the witchcraft of sealing emotion, it will probably not end well." Was this a disguised compliment to Li Hanyuan? Jingwan glanced at a certain someone. She had to admit that his complexion was indeed better. "I didn't take it to heart." "That's good." Sun Yilin nodded. Then, he let Li Hongyuan's people take him away. This change is too big. It's a little unreal. Really, there was a world of difference. It was as if they were two different people. He was just stating a fact. Jingwan choked and reached out to pinch his face. You are so thick-skinned. Li Honyuan held her hand. Isn't it the truth? Yes, yes, yes. Jingwan was a little helpless. Didn't Gong Jiu say that Min Xiaoyuan was also implanted with a witchcraft, and it was the extremely vicious beauty witchcraft? When she heard Gong Jiu mention the beauty witchcraft, Jingwan shuddered. She was wondering how Ruan Fangfei could have such a perfect face that was not a human skin mask. She was also disfigured, and it was quite serious. Even a medical technology in her previous life might not be able to repair it. When the beauty witchcraft is first implanted, it requires a sacrifice. For those inhumane people, they naturally don't care about the lives of others for the sake of beauty. Wan, you've given a big problem to a lover. Li Hongyuan's behavior became more and more vicious. In his opinion, there was nothing good at all. What he said was not accusing Jingwan of being heartless and cruel. Jingwan was the initiator. Anyway, she was destined to be a bad person. It didn't matter. When Min Xiaoyuan heard the news, it was as if she had been struck by a bolt from the blue. She was dumbfounded. Then she collapsed. Impossible, impossible. How could this happen? I want to see the prince. I want to see the princess. They can't do this. They can't do this. Mama Gong stopped her. Miss Min, Sun Yilan's crime is not enough to be regretted no matter how many times he dies. It's already lenient to let him live. But he's already a useless person. Why can't we let him go? Miss Min, you're so naive. You had this idea from the beginning. You chose Wang Xinzi? You should know that Sun Yilan's threat comes from his intelligence, not his body. So, he can either die or become a fool. There won't be a third choice. The prince said that you can help him choose one more time. How would it choose? This multiple-choice question was too difficult. When Min Xiaoyuan looked at Sun Yilan again, she was like a soulless puppet. Sun Yilan knew what was going on almost instantly. He didn't know if his choice was right or wrong. No, in this matter, it wasn't wrong no matter what choice he made. It could also be said that no matter what choice he made, it was also wrong. Min Xiaoyuan was originally a noble lady of an aristocratic family. If she hadn't met him, Sun Yilan wanted to say something, but he didn't know what to say. At this moment, he really didn't know what to say. Min Xiaoyuan's lips trembled. She cried again in front of Sun Yilan. She was extremely helpless. If you let go, I can die. Just don't meet me in the next life. No, don't. Sun Yilan still cruelly gave the choice to Min Xiaoyuan. Min Xiaoyuan really couldn't watch him die. Gong Jiu came over with a tray. There was a porcelain bottle on it. It was obvious what it was for. Sun Yilan was calm, but Min Xiaoyuan looked like she had seen the most terrifying thing in the world. She kept shaking her head. It was useless to want to snatch it. In the end, Gong Jiu personally fed Sun Yilan a pill that looked very ordinary. Sun Yilan found that his consciousness was becoming more and more chaotic. His understanding of many things seemed to be disappearing little by little. That feeling, to be honest, was not very good. How did he reach this step? That's right. When he was in Jiangnan, he once thought that people like Jin Xinwang couldn't really be good to a person. Jingwan must have suffered a lot in the backyard of Jin Xinwang Fu. He faintly had the idea of letting her escape from the sea of suffering. Because he thought too much, some things seemed to have taken root in his heart. And at this time, he met Ruan Fangfei. The other party told him that the reason why he lost his love was because of Li Hongyuan's scheme. Regardless of whether he believed the other party's words at that time, he suddenly couldn't think straight and turned into a demon. When he wasn't rational and his mind wasn't clear, Ruan Fangfei took advantage of the situation and planted a coup. Thus, the negative emotions in his heart were completely magnified uncontrollably. Paranoia, demonic barrier, darkness, some methods were naturally born. When everything in his mind disappeared and he didn't even know who he was or what he was, a tear finally slid down from the corner of Sun Yilan's eyes. Perhaps that should be called regret. Min Xiaoyuan saw the whole process. He didn't have a pained expression, but a person's eyes couldn't lie. That pair of eyes may have become abnormally clear, but it was so clear that nothing was left. Min Xiaoyuan carefully called out to him. He actually still had a reaction, but he opened his mouth and revealed a silly smile. Having a reaction didn't mean that he understood her meaning. He only had some of the most instinctive things left: eating, drinking, defecating, and sleeping. At this moment, Min Xiaoyuan really broke down completely and wailed loudly. Jingwan could hear her crying from the upper room. She lowered her head and fiddled with the prayer beads in her hands, expressionless. However, this matter was over, so it was over. They had to prepare to return to the capital. It wasn't long before the end of the year. The mantis stalks the cicada, unaware of the oriole behind. As the hunter who had his eyes on the oriole, he naturally had to appear at the end. At this time was already quite tight. However, before they left, Jingwan asked someone to leave a sum of money for Min Xiaoyuan. It wasn't a lot, so as to prevent an inexperienced girl like her from revealing her wealth and being targeted. It wasn't a small amount either. As long as she wasn't too unlucky, it should be enough to support Min Xiaoyuan through the most difficult transition period and find a way to maintain her livelihood. At the same time, she sent a letter to Min Yuhan in Jiangnan, explaining the matter concisely. However, she didn't tell him where he was. Even if the Min family wanted to find him, it would be like looking for a needle in a haystack. If they really found him, it could only be said that some things were destined. At that time, the only thing that would be better would be the material things. Nothing else would change. The speed at which they returned wasn't slow, but it wasn't very hurried either. When they arrived at the first city, Fu Rong, whose injuries had improved a lot, followed the original plan and found the place designated by the Minister of Rights, Lord Su, to deliver the news. Li Honyuan had specially sent people to investigate that place. There was nothing special about it. Ordinary people's letters were also sent. The special channel behind it should be a few turns. Li Honyuan had ordered people to keep an eye on it. However, it would be difficult to find it just once. If there were too many people, it would be very likely to alert the enemy. However, this route wasn't urgent for the time being. They could slowly explore and eliminate it after dealing with Lord Su. After sending the news that Li Honyuan was safe and was about to return to the capital, it didn't matter if some people had plans to force him to abdicate. They would force them to take action and control the situation in the capital. It would be easy to deal with Li Honyuan in turn. When Li Honyuan returned to the capital, he would definitely make things difficult for them. This was because they knew that since Li Honyuan was safe, he must know that they had a part to play in this matter. If they didn't make the first move, they could only wait for death. Ah Yuan, do you think Prince Rui knows the true identity of Lord Su? He knows. Li Hongming's current power is not as strong as before. Even if he wants to stake it all on one throw, he still needs a trump card as a guarantee. Otherwise, even if he succeeds, he will be quickly overthrown. If he doesn't become the emperor, he may still be alive. If he is overthrown as the emperor, he will definitely die. Chapter 580. So, Prince Rui doesn't know that Lord Su will take the initiative to tell him that the former Wei will help Prince Rui stabilize his position on the river. In exchange, Prince Rui will give him enough benefits when he becomes the emperor, and 99% of these benefits will be part of Qi Yuan's territory. Jingwan continued. Li Honyuan nodded. This is Li Hongming's biggest trump card now. Otherwise, he wouldn't dare to make a move at this time. The former Wei has always been eyeing Qi Yuan covetously. Cooperating with them is like asking a tiger for its skin. What good can there be? Jingwan paused. No, Prince Rui is just a subject. The so-called cooperation is essentially treason and giving away the country's interests. How can such a person be a member of the royal family? How can he be a human? For the emperor, he can let the country fall into the hands of outsiders, but he can't allow his own people to covet it. This is because as long as the country is still there, no matter how big the territory is, he will still be the emperor. If it's his own people, they won't allow others to sleep beside them. This principle is the same for Li Hongming and many others. As long as Li Hongming can sit on the throne and prevent it from falling into the hands of his brothers, he can cede some territory to the former Wei. In his eyes, it might be the smallest sacrifice in exchange for the biggest benefit. Power is tempting, not to mention the supreme and unique position, Jingwan murmured. Jingwan's belly was becoming more and more obvious, but it didn't look cumbersome. Moreover, she hadn't been taking good care of herself recently, so she basically didn't put on any weight. Although not every pregnant woman would put on weight, Li Honyuan felt that he had neglected his duty when he looked at Jingwan, who didn't change much except for her belly. Wan, you should eat more. Jingwan was still immersed in some things. When she suddenly heard Li Hongyuan's words, it took her half a beat to realize what he was talking about. Her expression cracked a little. Wasn't this a little too sudden? Jingwan elbowed him. We're talking about something serious. Isn't your health important? What could be more important than you? Li Honyuan said quite confidently. When a woman is pregnant, she will gain half of her original weight. You, on the other hand, are still the same as before. Your belly is big. This shows that you must have lost weight. Jingwan was speechless. It was true that she had gained so much weight. However, she had always exercised a lot. It was normal for her to not grow much. Moreover, her heart was not well during this period of time. It was normal for her to be a little thin. She would be fine after some rest. However, there were some things that she really couldn't do about this man. It was all a lie to say that she had completely turned over the situation. However, in the end, it was still her own failure that made her unable to be hard-hearted towards him. It will grow back after we return to the capital. How can we raise them after we return to the capital? They should eat more now, Li Honyuan said with a frown. He was not very satisfied with the food on the road. Okay, I'll try to eat more. Even if her appetite had increased, it was basically fixed. She could not force herself to continue. However, forget it. There was no need to argue with him. Anyway, she would not be able to win against him in the end. That's right. Li Honyuan touched her head. Jingwan was annoyed by him. She closed her eyes weakly. She did not care about whether it was a big or small matter, whether it was serious or not. She could not care about it. As they got closer and closer to the capital, Jingwan's belly was already 6 months old. The following journey would definitely not be peaceful. Of course, at this time, they gradually met up with the people who were looking for Li Honyuan on the surface. Knowing that Li Honyuan, this big hidden danger, was about to return to the capital, how could they let him return safely and disrupt their next big plan? Therefore, intercepting and killing him was necessary. However, there were many people guarding him now. Unless they mobilized the army, they would not be able to kill him quickly enough at this juncture. Therefore, the hope of killing him was slim. They could only try to stop him as much as possible. At the same time, Li Hongyuan's true face was exposed. It was a storm in the city. If the people were just listening to it for fun, the court officials and the emperor were not the same. When they tried to control or kill Li Honyuan before, the matter would be exposed to Lu Chengdi, which might become Li Hongyuan's protection. Now it was different. If they wanted to deal with Li Honyuan, it was best to use Lu Chengdi's hand. As an emperor, no matter how much he favored his son, once this son appeared to be good on the surface, but secretly coveted his father's throne, this was even more infuriating than those who coveted it openly. Especially when he was able to deceive everyone. It was enough to show how deep his thoughts were and how great his methods were. After knowing it, Li Hongming sent people to investigate it. Li Hongyuan's business was too big. It was impossible for it to be flawless. Therefore, they did not disappoint. They more or less found something. Those things were solid evidence. Lu Chengdi had to believe it. It was enough to show how angry Lu Chengdi was when he knew it. As the saying goes, when things reach an extreme, they will move in the opposite direction. Lu Chengdi used to be so good to Li Honyuan because he felt guilty and also because of his affection for the imperial noble consort. In his eyes, Li Honyuan was a bastard, but his nature was good. Now the truth slapped him hard. This was the biggest fool and deceit. He really lost his dignity. Moreover, he knew that he was a devil. If he sat on the throne, it would only bring misfortune to the country, but he still dared to covet the throne. He simply did not take the country that his ancestors had conquered seriously. He was unloyal, unfilial, and unrighteous. He was worse than a beast. Li Honyuan stepped on Lu Chengdi's bottom line and touched his reverse scale. He used to dote on him, but now he loathed him. He loathed him to the point that he wanted his life. Before the evidence was brought out, other than those who had long leaned towards Li Hongyuan, the others did not believe it. But after the evidence was brought out, they were first shocked, then frightened. Thinking about Jin Xinwang's usual style, they couldn't help but touch their necks. They felt a chill. It seemed that they had been in danger of losing their heads more than once. Now that they thought about it, they still had lingering fears. As an insider, looking at some people's green and white faces, their hearts were very happy. At the beginning, they had imagined what kind of reaction these people would have. Sure enough, it did not disappoint. However, they could not show it. They had to be like everyone else. In comparison, Luo Peishan did not have it easy. Because he was Jin Xinwang Fei's grandfather, in-laws, and a natural ally. He sat in the position of the Minister of the Ministry of Personnel and held great power. On the surface, he was neutral, selfless, and businesslike. Who knew if he secretly smuggled goods and secretly helped Jin Xinwang make things convenient? As a result, those who were praised and promoted by Luo Peishan, no matter who they were all suspected by their original masters. A small portion of them were not wronged. Most of them were sincerely wronged. However, in their hearts, they could only smile bitterly. In fact, it was not only that, but those who were related to the Luo family were more or less affected. This was because the people who wanted a rope in Luo Peishan were all sent away by him. They thought that he was determined not to get involved, but in the end, he was just playing with them. Now, even if they couldn't touch him, they couldn't touch the others, right? The actions of the people below were frequent. Lu Qingdi saw it, but he pretended not to see it. It was clear that he tacitly approved of their actions. This made some people even more rampant. Lu Qingdi did not admonish Luo Peishan, but Luo Peishan was a good official. He directly asked for sick leave without a time limit. Then he flicked his sleeves and closed the door, declining visitors. His sons and grandsons still went to the roll call on time. However, they did not have much to do and did not want to be too idle. Usually, many people came to them, but this time, they could not wait to avoid them. They were very calm. When it was time, they went home and did not go anywhere. At the same time, the womenfolk of the Luo family also did not go out. This attitude was quite obvious. Luo Peishan had always been loyal to his duties, and there was no conclusive evidence to prove that he was in cahoots with Jin Xinwang. Lu Qingdi even had to find various excuses to get rid of Fu Yunting. Naturally, he would not make a move on an old official under such circumstances. Therefore, Luo Peishan was actually living very comfortably in the Luo family. Some things were already expected. Moreover, when Li Hongyuan was completely out of danger, he had already sent them a secret letter. Therefore, the things that Luo Peishan needed to deal with had already been dealt with before. And the women in the harem were very concerned about this matter. They thought that they were very accurate in judging people, more accurate than many men. They also thought that Li Hongyuan had nothing but the favor of the emperor. But in reality, especially imperial concubine Su, she thought that she did a perfect job in front of Li Hongyuan. But in reality, she was the fool who was fooled. The slap on her face was even heavier and louder than Lu Qingdi's. How could the proud and arrogant imperial concubine Su be merciful? Anger attacked her heart, and she almost fainted again. Lu Qingdi looked at the portrait of the imperial concubine. The portrait was so beautiful. The person who painted it put a lot of thought into it. When he got it, he only thought that his son was filial and just said one thing and meant another. However, now that he thought about it, what filial piety was it? It was clearly to increase his bargaining chip. From small to big, when he talked back to him, he was really talking back and mocking him. When the rest of it went well, he was probably just pretending. The more Lu Qingdi thought about it, the angrier he became. His eyes were full of gloomy hostility, so much so that he crumpled the painting that he cherished in every way. There were even traces of damage. After he reacted, he quickly smoothed it out. However, no matter how he smoothed it, there were still traces. The next day, Lu Qingdi flew into a rage in the imperial court. He kept cursing the evil creature and unfilial son. However, everyone could hear that the meaning was actually different. No matter how much he cursed the former, there was still intimacy. But the latter, there was only anger left. A decree was sent out of the capital, ordering Li Hongyuan to return to the capital without delay. However, this was actually only a decree on the surface. The real decree was a secret one for Li Suyin. It asked him to think of a way to get rid of Li Hongyuan on the way and then blame it on Fu Yunting. It was a perfect way to kill two birds with one stone. Lu Qingdi was very helpful in dealing with Li Hongyuan. However, his sons didn't know. They only thought that even so, he was still biased towards Li Hongyuan. They were all furious in private. He held his breath in his heart. Father, since it's like this, you really can't blame your son for being unfilial. Not long after Lu Qingdi issued the secret decree was already in front of Li Hongyuan. That's right, it was the original secret decree, not a copy. Speaking of turning hostile without mercy, His Majesty is a classic example. Jingwan looked at the emperor's private seal on the opened letter and said, "As expected, there's nothing strange about it. No matter how biased he is, he can't cross the bottom line. He can't tolerate deceit, and he can't tolerate people shaking his country." Li Hongyuan didn't care. When he was governing the country, he was at most mediocre. If he wasn't a subject, who knows what he would have become? How could he let others shake his country? Jingwan sneered. What nonsense was this about the son of a ghost being inauspicious and affecting the destiny of the country? As an emperor, those who are humble and introspective are in the minority. The rest, other than those who are muddle-headed and tyrannical or just puppets, generally think that they are ruling very well. The weather is good, the people are obedient, and the world is peaceful. Then what about you, Yuan? What kind of emperor do you belong to? Me? Muddle-headed emperor, tyrant emperor, and wise emperor. Li Hongyuan was very clear about his own position. A tyrant can be paired with a muddle-headed emperor or a wise emperor. How can a muddle-headed emperor and a wise emperor coexist? Don't tell me that you are sometimes wise and sometimes muddle-headed. If that was the case, it would probably be a split personality. Wan, do you still need to ask your husband about this? Li Hongyuan looked at Jingwan meaningfully. Don't put a tall hat on my head. I can't afford it. Thank you, Jingwan said lightly. Li Hongyuan smiled and didn't say much. Since the first assassination, there had been one after another. There were all kinds of strange methods. In addition to the direct confrontation, there were all kinds of poisons, assassinations, road destruction, and riots. It could be said that it was brilliant and varied. Sometimes it happened once in 2 or 3 days, and sometimes it happened twice or thrice a day. It added a lot of fun to their rather boring journey back to the capital. And these methods were all dealt with simply and crudely. It was like a small stone thrown into a calm river, but it set off circles of ripples. However, Li Hongyuan was a huge ship. How could those small waves stop his speed? The only threat should be the black-robe guards led by Li Suyin. However, after Li Suyin sent out the secret edict, she acted as if nothing happened. Instead, she and Fu Yunting escorted Li Hongyuan back to the capital. And the situation here would not be reported to Lu Qingdi. As for what happened after they returned to the capital, to be honest, they were not afraid. It was hard to say whether Lu Qingdi would see them as their master. This was not a baseless guess. It was very likely to be the truth. It was not the first time they had dealt with Li Hongyuan, especially Fu Yunting. Not long after this master opened his residence, they had been living in an abyss of suffering under him. They did not completely understand his nature, but at least 70 to 80%. When he laid his cards on the table, it meant that others did not have a chance to flip the cards. With the current situation, he would not wait any longer. Let Lu Qingdi admonish him, convict him, or even kill him. It was close to the end of the year. Ordinary people were busy preparing for the new year. They had worked hard all year round. At this time, it was time to reward them. Inside and outside the court, it was calm on the surface. But in the dark, it was not the case. Some were excited, some were nervous, and some were still scheming against each other. On the 20th day of the 12th lunar month, it snowed heavily for several days. On the 30th day, there was a big red sun. Of course, when the sun shined, the snow melted. It was colder than when it snowed. Not many people liked to go out. However, this did not affect the mood of some people. They stood under the porch and looked up at the sky. They sighed. It was really a good weather. Even their smiles became more genuine. At night, when the firecrackers were the loudest, the city gate opened. A group of people quietly entered the city. Madame Luo used the excuse that she was a little tired and went back to rest. She did not stay up for the new year with everyone. She was already old. Although there were no obvious symptoms in the past few years, she was not very healthy. So, this was a very normal thing. Luo Peishan also used the excuse that he wanted to accompany her and went back to the main courtyard. There was nothing strange about the lights in the main room. However, after everyone went in and saw the people sitting inside, old Luo and old Madame Luo were very calm. It seemed that they already knew about this. On the contrary, the maidservants behind them were so scared that their legs turned to jelly. Didn't Jinxin Wang and Wang Fei not return yet? How could they quietly appear in the Luo family? However, the rumors outside were abuzz. The servants, did not know whether it was true or false. Although there was nothing different in the Fu, it was just that Wang Shi was strict in governing the family. The servants did not dare to say it out loud, but they were still terrified. But now, they did not know what was going on. Their hearts were beating wildly, but they did not dare to breathe. This subject greets Wang Ye and Wang Fei. No need for formalities. Li Honyuan lightly said and took a sip of tea. During this time, Luo Darren has worked hard. To be able to share Wang Ye's worries, how could it be hard? Wang Ye should talk with grandfather. I will go inside with grandmother to have a private talk. Jingwan smiled. Li Honyuan nodded. Go ahead. Old Madame Luo's gaze had been on Jingwan since she came in. What was the meaning of this? After changing places, old Madame Luo did not say anything. She first carefully sized up Jingwan. There did not seem to be anything wrong with her complexion, was also rosy. However, she was still not at ease. She did not understand things like goo worms. But worms, they had entered the human body and were still alive. Just thinking about it made her shudder. Therefore, she asked Gong Mama in detail. The reason why she did not ask Jingwan was that she was worried that she would not be honest and report only the good news and not the bad news. Jingwan's mouth slightly raised. What? There was actually a time when she was not trusted by grandmother. Gong Mama repeatedly assured that Jingwan's health was really good. Only then did old Madame Luo feel relieved and turn back to talk to Jingwan. Madame Luo didn't ask about what happened when they went out this time, and it wasn't about national affairs. It was all about family matters. However, because she knew what would happen the next day, these family matters seemed to have a special flavor. It was as if they were always a little absent-minded. Moreover, both of them were worried that the other party's energy was not enough, so they didn't say too much. The grandmother and granddaughter simply spent more time together. About an hour later, someone outside came to invite Jingwan to return to the Prince Yu's mansion. Jingwan and Jingwan stood up hand in hand. Old Madame Luo wanted to send Jingwan out, but Jingwan did not let her. It was warm in the house. After going out, she would feel cold. Grandmother, you don't have to be so formal. You can't ignore the etiquette. Grandmother, just this once. Jingwan said softly. Old Madame Luo instantly understood what Jingwan meant. If nothing unexpected happened, she would be the empress soon. At that time, it would be impossible for her to be formal. Moreover, this was probably the last time Jingwan sat here and talked to old Madame Luo. She might not even step into the Luo family's door again. Okay, old Madame Luo agreed. Her eyes were a little wet. Her own granddaughter would become the most honorable woman in the world. This was something she had never thought before. Although she had expected to come to this step today, it still felt a little unreal, especially when she thought about how she would be trapped deep in the palace in the future. There was no joy. Instead, she felt more and more upset. She only hoped that her grandson-in-law would not let her down in this small world of loneliness. Grandmother, I'm leaving. Take care. Jingwan squatted. Old Madame Luo and the servants who served Jingwan subconsciously wanted to help her up, but they all stopped halfway and let her finish this bow. Then, Old Madame Luo watched Jingwan being helped out and suddenly thought of the scene when she watched her get married. She should have been happy, but she couldn't stop crying. Outside, they didn't let old Madame Luo or Luo Peishan see them off. They left the same way they came. However, they left, but there were many people in the Luo family's house. It was obvious that if something happened in the palace tomorrow, the Luo family would be one of the key places to be taken care of. Of course, they could send people to rescue, but just in case, it was the wisest choice to guard the Luo family from the beginning. When they returned to the prince's mansion, Begonia Elegant House was not brightly lit. After all, the masters were not there. Even if the servants looked after the courtyard, it didn't make sense for them to be the same as the masters. However, when Jingwan and the others went in, everything in the room was already prepared. It was as if they had never left. Li Hanyuan didn't let anyone disturb them. He washed up with Jingwan and went straight to sleep. Like many nights in the past, when it was very difficult for people to fall asleep, the husband and wife slept well. Chapter 581. As time went by, the servants gradually became excited. Weren't there rumors outside that their master was ambitious and had been preparing for a rebellion a few years ago? They originally didn't believe it because they, who were under the same roof, didn't notice anything. However, after hearing so much, they couldn't help but have doubts. And now, if Wang Ye really didn't have such thoughts, he could come back openly. Why did he come back so quietly? It was enough to show that perhaps there really was such a matter. The people outside were saying how powerful Wang Ye was. Did this mean that Wang Ye really had the ability to ascend the throne? If it was really like this, how could it not make people excited? After all, as the saying goes, when a person attains the Tao, even his chickens and dogs will ascend to heaven. If their Wang Ye became the emperor, then wouldn't their status immediately double? The more they thought, the more they started to fantasize about what they would do in the future. Of course, the majority of people held this beautiful idea. Some people thought that they were still rational. Speaking of which, what if Wang Ye didn't succeed? Right now, Wang Ye was the public enemy of all the other princes. Moreover, he had offended so many people in the past. If he was defeated, then they were afraid that they wouldn't have a good ending. Therefore, they were terrified and uneasy. The more they thought, the more fearful they were. They felt as if a knife was placed on their necks. The thought of leaving the Fu was born. As for what to do, it wasn't clear. It must be known that right now, their entire person was muddle-headed. However, the current Jin Wangfu was still under strict control. Even if there were some people in the Wangfu who had small problems, or simply because of fear, they could forget about taking half a step out of the Wangfu. After a few more Shurchun, everything would be rewritten. Li Hanyuan and Jingwan peacefully ate breakfast. It was still that familiar taste. It was just as delicious. If she had eaten it for a long time, she might feel that it was normal. However, the situation was different now. She hadn't eaten it for a long time, so she ate it very comfortably. Jingwan couldn't help but drink half a bowl of porridge. Li Hanyuan saw it. Sure enough, the things in the Fu are more to your taste. Jingwan wiped her mouth. It's just because I haven't eaten for a long time. The familiar delicacies were one thing. In fact, it might be because they had returned to a familiar environment. Perhaps the current capital was not stable, but a familiar environment would always make people feel more at ease. This psychological factor should be present in most people. Li Hanyuan nodded and did not say anything. He was acting as usual. Ah Yuan, what do you need to do today? After eating, Jingwan asked while holding her chin and tilting her head. There's no need to do anything. Just wait. Everything that needed to be arranged had already been arranged. Therefore, during these few hours, they would actually be quite free. Jingwan looked outside. It was clearly the most tense moment, but they still seemed to be the same. TSK. As expected, he shouldn't be worried. As for what would happen if he failed, he shouldn't think too much about it. It was meaningless. When the time came, he should do what he should do. Thus, Jingwan started her daily routine of nurturing the baby in the prince's mansion in a good mood. Then, when looking at the flowers and plants, she finally realized that one person was missing. Then, She remembered what was going on. Where's Qingju? Where's she? Bring her to see me. Since Jingwan's accident, Qingju had been locked up. However, the master did not say anything, and the nannies did not say anything. Therefore, other than being locked up, everything else was fine. Qingju was locked up in the main courtyard. Therefore, she knew that Jingwan and the others had come back last night. During their absence, she did not get any news, so she did not know how Jingwan was doing. As time went by, she became more and more tormented. Sometimes, she would wake up in nightmares about Jingwan's accident. Even if the meal was the same as before, she could not eat much. Under such circumstances, Qingju naturally became thin, haggard, and dispirited. Although she knew that Jingwan was safe and sound last night, and slept well, she still felt terrible. Therefore, when Jingwan saw Qingju, she couldn't believe it either. Her first reaction was that Qingju might have been mistreated, but on second thought, that shouldn't be the case. When they weren't around, everything in the main courtyard was under her wet nurse's control. Her wet nurse had always treated her maidservants well, and even treated them like her own daughters. Qingju's mistake wasn't done on purpose. Since she was waiting for her to deal with it, then there shouldn't be any mistreatment. Soon, Jingwan also understood the reason. She was lively in nature, but she was straightforward in nature. Her loyalty to her was unquestionable. Often, it was because of this that some things became more and more unbearable. Looking at Qingju kneeling on the ground quietly, Lin Mingya felt that not only did her clothes look empty and unsuitable, but her temperament had also changed completely. To a large extent, a person's temperament could be changed by a major accident. However, the accident of Qingju was not serious. For her, perhaps there was nothing more serious than what everyone thought. Jingwan sighed. Get up. She was already in such a state. This punishment was enough. She must have remembered the lesson. Please punish me, Your Highness. Speaking of which, Qingju's biggest mistake should be that she had private relations with a man. This was originally a great crime, especially as she was the head maidservant by her master's side. To a large extent, her every action was closely related to her master. If something were to happen, it would be blamed on her master by outsiders. To put it lightly, it would be said that she was not strict enough and did not discipline her properly. To put it heavily, it would be said that she was disloyal to her master. What would be ruined would not only be her own reputation. Being deceived and used to harm her master was also unforgivable. However, she was also a victim in nature. It would not be tolerated in other places. Jingwan was different. There were intentional homicide and negligent homicide. Jingwan would not flog her to death or sell her because of this incident. However, this girl was obviously stubborn. Then from today, go to do the cleaning. You are in charge of the courtyard and the main courtyard. Jingwan was helpless. If she really did not do something, she would probably want to apologize with death. Yes, thank you, master. Compared with Fu Rong, Qingju was actually a real qualified maid. Fu Rong's kind, to put it bluntly, was a rebellious person. It was originally a small matter. Once it was solved, it would be over. However, after this incident, Qingju would really not be able to marry for the rest of her life. If Jingwan took her to the palace, she might die of old age in the palace. If not, she would be destined to live in the countryside. Why do you worry about such a small matter? Li Hongyuan said discontentedly. Don't worry about it. It's just a matter of a few words. Jingwan said helplessly. Wan, there is one thing that I have to remind you. The maids around you have been with you for many years and are loyal to you. It's normal that you treat them differently and are particularly soft-hearted. However, if you treat them gently today, it will intensify the impression that you are soft-hearted in other people's hearts. Perhaps they will subconsciously think that even if they do something wrong, they will be forgiven by you, especially when they don't make mistakes objectively. The consequence is that they are not careful enough and may be used by others. You should know that this kind of situation sometimes leads to a big disaster. The higher the position, the more dangerous it will be. Jingwan was stunned. She really did not think so much at this moment, but it was a fact. Jingwan looked at Qingju again with hesitation. Qing-ju knelt down again. "Your Highness, please kill me." Jingwan's lips trembled slightly. It was not so easy to change something that was deeply ingrained in one's bones. "Your Highness, this servant's mistake should have been punishable by death. Your Highness is merciful and took pity on this servant, so you let it go. This servant feels that what His Highness said is right. In the future, Your Highness will stand in a higher position. That position requires you to show your supreme prestige to deter the people below. This servant only wishes to die and serve Your Highness in the next life. At that time, this servant will not make such a stupid mistake again. Your Highness, please kill me." Qing-ju's words had crossed the line. No maid would be bold enough to do so, but no one would care about it. Jingwan closed her eyes and did not speak. Her body was trembling slightly. Li Honyuan could not bear it, and neither could Nanny Gong and the others. In fact, it was not a big problem to be soft-hearted. They could be the bad guy and help him establish his prestige. There was no need to force her to change. In fact, compared to before, there was a change. At least, the scope of her soft-hearted target was narrowing. However, after the previous incident, Li Honyuan still had some things to do. He still hoped that his wife could stand on her own. However, when he thought about it, his wife seemed to be doing well without him. So, he was the source of her weakness. This understanding made the living hell happy and unhappy. As a man, his self-esteem would probably be greatly satisfied if his wife relied on him. This was also what Li Honyuan had devoted his life to in this life, to hold up the sky for her, to protect her, and to make sure that she would not have to worry about anything. However, Jingwan's situation was like she could take care of herself, but he blocked her and blocked her brilliance. TSK. He wanted to raise her to the highest position. In the beginning, he was like a mascot. He only wanted to give her the best and let her live well. However, as he got to know her more and more, he realized that this was actually a waste of God's gift. In her heart, she would not be willing to be a vase. In comparison, others only saw her as his vassal. In fact, he preferred to be closely connected by people and history books. In this way, it was not enough to just protect her under his wings. In this way, no matter how much she did, others would not see it as her merit. Therefore, although his heart ached, he still wanted to force her. It was not that he had not forced her before, but it was very gentle. After that, it was often left unsettled and the effect was limited. Now that he had the opportunity, and it happened to be someone by her side, he naturally wanted to make good use of it. "Wan, I won't force you. It's okay. I'll take care of everything," Li Honyuan said softly. However, Jingwan, who had her eyes closed, did not see Li Honyuan's extremely cold expression and even the cold look in his eyes. He knew that he was her weakness. As long as it was related to him, other people and things had to be put aside. It had to be said that Li Honyuan had been scheming and scheming against Jingwan from the beginning. Sure enough, after waiting for a while, Li Honyuan got the answer he wanted. "Take her away and flog her to death." Li Honyuan smiled. Even if the others wanted to plead for Qing-ju, they did not dare to speak when they saw Li Honyuan's expression. No matter how he treated Jingwan, in their eyes, he was still the most terrifying existence. One look, one expression, could make people tremble in fear. "Thank you, Your Highness. I'll take my leave now." Qing-ju kowtowed 3 times to Jingwan. There was no resentment in her eyes. Instead, she was calmer than ever. She was a sinner. At the end, she could use her life to establish the dignity of the princess, which could be regarded as a little atonement. Jingwan did not open her eyes and did not look at Qing-ju for the last time. Li Honyuan stroked Jingwan's back again and again to calm her down. Jingwan's mood was naturally not good after that. She was a little tired. Jingwan did not react for a moment, but Nanny Gong and the others noticed something strange. The prince doted on the princess to the core and did not do everything for her. Suddenly, he acted so ruthlessly. There must be a purpose. And this purpose was roughly guessed when Li Honyuan looked at the map after Jingwan fell asleep in the afternoon. They did not dare to believe it. However, when they thought about it, it seemed that this was something their master would do. When he just ascended the throne, he personally led the army and let the empress be the regent. When this happened, the reaction of the court officials was still unknown. With such a monarch, the officials would probably be alternating between relief and headache at any time. The banquet in the palace was still going on. Usually, it would last until the middle of the afternoon. Whether they knew it or not, the emotions on their faces might not be real. In a palace banquet, this group of people would always be the best actors. As for those who were not good at acting, they were basically invisible. It was best for them to sit obediently and eat their own food. Although Luo Peishan asked for leave, everyone knew that it was just an excuse. Therefore, he and Madame Luo still brought their son and daughter-in-law to the palace to pay a New Year's visit. No one felt that there was anything wrong with it. However, except for the eldest son and his daughter-in-law, no one else was brought. However, even though it was the new year, there were still people who did not stop. For no reason, they would bring Li Hongyuan out for a walk to stimulate Lu Qingdi's traumatized heart. Lu Qingdi's secret edict to Li Suyin had not been sent back. He only knew that the bastard was getting closer and closer to the capital. On the surface, he did not follow the edict. His unhurried speed made Lu Qingdi on the verge of exploding. And some people who were against Li Hongyuan only thought that their plan to stop him was successful. According to the news, Li Hongyuan would need at least 3 or 4 days to return. This time was enough. When the time came, they would set up an inescapable net. They did not believe that he would not die. Lu Qingdi was repeatedly stabbed in the back. It was difficult to get rid of his anger. He drank a lot of wine. This time, he drank a lot. He went to the side hall of Qianquan Hall to rest. Because there were people with ulterior motives, they naturally followed to serve him. And there were more than one such person. After a few words, more people joined in. Then, the concubines did not want to be outdone. Even if their children were still young, they all wanted to make their presence known in front of Lu Qingdi. Thus, intentionally or unintentionally, the royal family gathered in one place, while the court officials gathered in another. Everyone wanted to get closer to Lu Qingdi. Lu Qingdi only felt his ears buzzing, which made his head hurt even more. All of you shut up. In the side hall, everyone immediately quieted down. They looked at Lu Qingdi with some fear. Your Majesty, please don't be angry. We're just worried about your Majesty's dragon body. Noble consort Su sat on the side and said softly. However, Lu Qingdi would not be comforted by such words. His eyes were cold, full of hostility and depression. Worried about my dragon body? You can't wait for me to die. Your Majesty, how can you say that? You are the emperor, the father, and the husband. You are our sky, our everything. Noble consort Su's tone was still unchanged. But if one looked carefully, they would find that she did not really care about what she said. Moreover, she sat upright and had no intention of getting close to Lu Qingdi. Was this how a concubine should appease the emperor? However, regardless of whether this was true or not, it still gave Lu Qingdi some comfort. In his opinion, noble consort Su's words couldn't be more correct. He was their everything. Whether he gave or took, it all depended on his words. Well, all of you get out. No one is allowed to come near without my permission. Lu Qingdi waved his hand impatiently. Many people hesitated, but still moved out. However, there were also people who sat as still as Mount Tai. I think it's better for you to stay here, Prince Kong suddenly said. Lu Qingdi shot a sharp look at him. Bastard, how dare you disobey me? Father, what are you talking about? However, in the past, when I was obedient, you still scolded me and didn't give me any face. I'm an adult now, and I have my dignity and face. Therefore, I've had enough of those things in the past. Today, since Imperial Father said to disobey, then I'll disobey for once. Guards, following Prince Kang's loud shout, a group of Imperial guards rushed into the hall and surrounded everyone. Every entrance and exit was tightly blocked, and the weapons in their hands were clearly pointed at them. If the people still didn't realize what was going on, then they were really idiots. As several palace servants were killed, screams rose one after another. Everyone covered their heads and ran around. Prince Kong snatched a knife and chopped down at the two younger brothers nearby. If you don't want to die, shut up for this prince. Prince Kong, who was still a gentleman a moment ago, showed his true colors now. Holding the bloody knife, his face was excited. It was a kind of excitement and trembling because he was about to get what he wanted. In the blink of an eye, 2 more people died, but no one dared to make sound. Lu Chindi trembled with anger. He pointed at Prince Kong. You unfilial son. How dare you try to usurp the throne? How dare you? Prince Kong walked in with a knife and a twisted smile. Listen what father is saying. I have already done this. Why would I not dare? As he spoke, he raised the knife and approached Lu Chindi little by little. In fact, I didn't want to come to this, but I was forced by father. You supported the other brothers, praised them, and belittled me. Everything the others did was right, but everything I did was wrong. Especially Li Hanyuan. He was obviously an unfilial bastard, but you still held him in the palm of your hand. However, it turned out that he was the most insidious and cunning one. No matter how much you spoiled him, he didn't take you seriously. But rest assured, father, I will share your burden and punish him well. Lu Chindi trembled even more. On the one hand, he was angry. On the other hand, he was afraid. He subconsciously stepped back. Come, take this beast down for me. Yu Zhongxing, Prince Kong sneered. Father, you are really old and confused. Take a good look. These people are the Imperial Guards. Do you know what the Imperial Guards mean? You know better than anyone what it means. In the past, when Prince Kong looked at Lu Chindi, he was always in awe. Because of his words, all his emotions would be swayed. Now, looking at him, he was just SOSO. Sure enough, the feeling of controlling the life and death of others was really pleasant, too pleasant. Impossible, absolutely impossible. Yu Zhongxing, where is he? Come in immediately to see me. Sure enough, a man came in from outside the gate. His posture was straight, his hand was holding a knife. His back was against the light, giving people a feeling of indomitable spirit. In the past, when facing Lu Chindi, Yu Zhongxing always lowered his eyebrows and restrained his eyes. But now, he looked directly at him without avoiding. His eyes were also very calm. Your Majesty, Lu Chindi suddenly found that Yu Zhongxing's betrayal made him angrier than his son, forcing him to abdicate. Yu Zhongxing, I treated you well and gave you a heavy responsibility. Is this how you repay me? How dare you betray me? Father, why do you say such things? As the saying goes, fish seek water and grass to live. Birds choose good trees to nest. Good birds choose trees to nest. Virtuous ministers choose masters to serve. Lord, you just thought that this son was more suitable for you. How can you say that I betrayed you? Lu Chindi was full of hatred. His eyes looked like he wanted to cut Yu Zhongxing into pieces. However, Yu Zhongxing had already restrained his gaze. Prince Kong turned his knife and pointed at Lu Chindi's chief eunuch. Go get the blank imperial edict. That eunuch didn't dare to disobey and hurriedly left, followed by an imperial guard. You want to force me to write an imperial edict? Do you think the courtiers are stupid? Moreover, you have no virtue and no ability. You killed your brother and tried to kill your father. You still want to sit on the throne? Being derided by Lu Chindi again, Prince Kang's eyes turned red. He raised his knife and slashed like a madman. Shut up, you old thing. Shut up for me. You're tuning into the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.